pledge allegiance to the flag Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Gary Farley.
Here.
Veronica Buchanan. Jerry Sartain.
Here.
Joe Machado.
Here.
Michael Rather.
Here.
Jared Barrett.
Here.
Zane Cantrell.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay, we do have a quorum. All voting members are present, so glad to see all of you here tonight. We have two items on our agenda for tonight, and let me welcome all of our visitors here. We're glad to have you, and we will have a public hearing for each item that we have before us. We ask that you keep your comments within the 3-minute limit. If we don't do that, we'll be here all night, and we pretty well know what we're looking at. We've studied it very thoroughly, but we do want to hear from those of you who would be impacted by any request. The minutes of the last meeting, June the 14th, do we have any changes or additions to those minutes?
Move to be approved, Mr. Chairman.
Have a motion that be approved. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. The minutes are approved. The first item of business tonight is James Rowland, who is requesting a special exemption approval for amenities storage. What do you have on that, please?
Thank you. This property is located at 1773 New Salem Road, and application 2017-34 is seeking special exception approval for the establishment of a mini storage business upon this property located in a commercial services zone. This is a larger tract, over 20 acres, but they are only going to develop 14.4 acres of this tract as a mini storage facility at this time, and that's what they are seeking approval for. The property was rezoned to commercial services from a residential zone earlier this year. During the rezoning process, it was known that it was the applicant's intentions to develop it as a mini storage facility. Now, if this is approved tonight, the mini storage facility and the development of the site will have to go through the site plan review process, at which time we would determine whether or not it meets all of our development standards and the standards, specific standards for mini storages that will be required to be demonstrated during the site plan review process. And we have heard from the city, and they have mentioned some concerns, so we will be in contact with the city and require the applicant to work with the city to address those concerns that they have identified. This is the surrounding area, and we are only considering the storage facility use tonight and not design of the site. So this surrounding area, there's a ballpark across the street. This is New Salem. It's close to the intersection or interchange of I-24 and Salem Road Highway. And you've got the Stones River Greenway running alongside of the site. The site is actually developed as a single-family residence at this time. And this is the World Outreach Religious Facility. And they are surrounded by the city in all directions, with the exception of the property to the south. And this is the frontage of that larger parcel along Barfield Road. And this is the concept plan that was supplied by the applicant. Like I said, it's subject to change significantly before it receives final approval, but the applicant has identified an ambitious plan so far for the 14.4 acres. We did not receive any phone calls regarding the site. However, we did hear from the city. about the concept plan, and that concludes our presentation.
Do we have anyone here representing this request? If you'll come forward, please.
Chairman, I'm Clyde Roundtree with Huddleston Steel Engineering. BZA members, I'm available for any kind of questions, but just a little bit of follow-up. It is going to be a mini storage, and as was mentioned, we're looking for a special exception permit to allow this in the CS zone. It is a combination of both conditioned and non-conditioned facility. And as far as the siting of it, as was mentioned, there are obviously some things in site planning will change as far as the overall design characteristics of the site. But the owner wanted to make sure that it was off the road quite a bit, so there'd be some buffering with this distance from New Salem Road and from Barfield Road. As is mentioned, as shown on the plan, the access is from Salem, from New Salem Road. So with that in mind, I'm available for any questions you may have related to this.
Gary?
Yes, sir. Appreciate you coming. My questions are, this was in my county commissioner district. I'm not the commissioner anymore, but I was involved with the help of the city and the county of getting this light there, knowing there's traffic issues out there, tremendous traffic issues out there. What is your plan, or the owner's plan to do with traffic? Because with as much as traffic is there, with big trucks and trailers and things like that coming in and out of here, to me, I've got a concern on safety on that. And my second question and my second thought is, inside the area where the buildings are at, fire protection, access for fire apparatuses, getting inside and out and making turns and stuff. What is your plan to alleviate those issues?
Okay. Thank you for your questions. I think really, as far as was mentioned, it's kind of a concept plan, so it's all the turning radiuses that are related to inside the facility will have to meet the standards in order for fire protection. I think the scale is probably a little deceiving. The drive lanes, I believe, are 25 to 30 feet wide. So let me verify that. Yeah, they're 25 feet wide now. So it's pretty ample room to get service vehicles in there. As far as New Salem Road and the traffic, again, I think we defer to the county engineering staff to see what they would like us to do in terms of any sort of improvement on New Salem or what have you. But I think as far as the use, the positive thing with mini storage is very little impact as far as traffic. I mean, these facilities, based on size, will generate 6 to 10 cars a day. So it's not a high use, high yield kind of traffic scenario.
And I understand there's not a lot of high use of that, but there's already a high usage of traffic out there with this thrown into the mix. To me, it's not what's
right.
bringing, it's what's
just one
already
more.
there.
Yes. Yeah, as far as New Salem Road, I'm not as familiar exactly what the long-term plan is to alleviate some of that pressure. I do feel like of all the uses, we're going to minimize the amount of impact that we'd have on traffic, but it's probably a bigger question than we're answering with this particular site. But I think it comes up every time anything happens along New Salem, and I'm not sure. It might be a Mike question here, but it seems like even the further down you go, the worse it gets as far as, since we're closer to the interstate here, I feel confident we can handle the traffic that's going to be coming in. I think they'll be coming in from across the interstate, not necessarily always coming from the south. So that may help us some in terms of how the actual flow happens. And then we know that around it, there's a lot of RM zoning. There's going to be some apartments associated with it. So we feel like the location is appropriate. But like you said, we're not really addressing the overall traffic issues on New Salem, and that's probably a bigger question, but we hear your concern.
Any other questions? Gary?
The greenway runs beside there. Are you going to do any buffering or anything for that to protect the view shed of that?
It'll obviously be fenced in on the back side, and we do have a landscape plan that shows evergreens planted along the rear portion. It's not a heavy buffer, but it's definitely a separation type of buffer, visually separating.
Will you build greenery there, plants, trees?
Yes, sir. Yeah, right. In the current plan, there's a line of evergreens along the back side, the heavier buffers along the residential side and along the access road.
Familiar with that. Any other questions? Thank you. You may be seated. We'll open this for a
Thank you.
public hearing for anyone who'd like to speak on this request. No one? Let the record show. You know, you may be a little bit too early with this. Here's what's going on out there. They're going to be widening that highway. When they do, they've got to build some kind of access to turning into that. And I don't know when all of this is going to take place. I've got another problem with the fire protection. You know, you're not going to get fire protection from the city. The county is not going to run into there. You know, you're it's one little island. You're in the floodplain. Folks, we've got to stop building anything in the floodplain. We get ourselves into trouble when we do that. I really, even though you're going to have a buffer, we need to protect that greenway. That's a real asset to the county and to the city and to the citizens that live here. And we've got to be mindful of what's built next to it. So I've got those problems with this, and you may be a little bit early on when this mini storage idea to be built. So any other comments? Michael, you look like you have something.
Well, I have a few. I agree with you 100%. My two main ones are the Greenway. We've invested a lot of money in that Greenway system. There are neighbors of this property that have invested a lot of money in their property. And I just think it's the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, the other one is traffic. Whether you're coming in or going out on Lebanon Highway, Franklin Road, South Church, 99, any of those major thoroughfares in this county have traffic issues. Drive around and you'll see it. Getting off of 24, going eastbound onto 99 with nothing going on at the church, they're backing up on the interstate. And so there's an issue there. And I think I'm not saying anything that we don't all know and others don't know about. And I understand that a storage unit is going to generate less traffic than other uses that may be in there. But my point is, I'm not opposed to growth as long as we do it smart. The problem is if we add any traffic, we're adding to the problem instead of coming up with a solution to the problem.
Any other comments? Do we have a motion on this?
Move to deny the application.
For all of these reasons that were listed.
Yes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Yes.
Gary Farley,
Yes.
Veronica Buchanan, Joe Michaud,
Yes.
Jerry Sartain, Michael Rather,
Yes.
Jared Barrett,
Yes.
Zane Cantrell.
Yes, it's a unanimous decision. The next item we have is a request for a special exemption approval for establishment of a transitional home. What do you have on that, please?
Thank you. Application 2017-35 involves the property located at 7578 Manchester Pike. It consists of two parcels, and that they total 11.34 acres. They are seeking special exception approval to allow this establishment of a transitional home upon the property located in the RM Medium Density Residential Zoning District. This property, obviously, it's located along Manchester Highway. It's two properties that are developed as two principal dwellings, and each of the sites have an accessory dwelling on the property. Renewed Life Ministries would like to establish their transitional home on both properties and house up to 10 residences with additional staff to provide guidance over the residences for people overcoming life issues. And they came in and met with Doug, our boss, and he recommended that since it's 10 residences, or 10 residents for the property, that they go through the special exception process. Now, granted, I've passed out to you our definition of family, and if they were only proposing to have 8 residents and staff, then they would not need any additional zoning approvals. But because of the number, they are appearing before you for special exception approval. Any changes to the site, like additional parking for staff, would have to go through site plan review. Any modifications to existing structures to accommodate the dormitory or the offices that are proposed would have to receive the appropriate permitting and go be inspected for that particular use. We have received opposition, letters in opposition from surrounding neighbors. We've received calls in opposition and calls inquiring about the proposed use. We passed out the letters at the previous meeting, so you have those in your possession. We went and posted a sign upon the site. And these are the surrounding uses. You'll see a nursery further down the road. There's residential uses. Both properties are accessed via the same driveway. So this is the driveway that they will use to access the site. And this is the pretty much what's existing, but the applicant supplied us with a plan showing what their intentions are to use each of the structures for. And that concludes our presentation.
We have anyone here representing this request?
My first time doing this, so you guys might have to help me a little bit. I'm Derek Faulkner. I'm with Renewed Life Ministries. I'm the executive director, and we plan to use this facility as a transitional home. I work with men who struggle with life issues, such as addiction and alcohol use. Most of my guys are coming from a background where they've maybe had some education. I don't take hardened criminals. I don't take people that are on the sex registry. Or any of that nature. If they're hardened criminals, we don't take them. I have a very narrow focus about the men that I want to work with. So I know and understand the concern that citizens might have, but I want to tell you that we have such a good reputation with our current location, and if anyone has read any of the letters that we had supplied in support of us, we've never had a problem with our guys in any way, never had police out, never had to call the police or for any reason. I know that we're going to be an asset to the community, not a liability. And that is our goal, is to be an asset. This last weekend, we worked at Uncle Dave Macon Days. We had over 60 volunteers. We had the box office, the gating, and the vendor parking. And we knocked it out of the park. We had a great time. The community really supports what we're doing, and I believe if you give us a chance, you're going to see that we'll be an asset to the community.
Your clients are still under the jurisdiction of the judicial system while they're there?
Sometimes they're court ordered to be there. Most of the time they come of their own free will.
Before they're ordered to go there?
Yes, sir.
Most of them are under the judicial?
No, most of them are not court ordered. No, sir. I'd say about 20% probably are.
You do follow this idea. If you all bought one section of that, you wouldn't be here.
Correct. Yes, sir.
By right. Mm-hmm. So you chose to want to buy both sections, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And the most that you would have would be 10 people.
We're going to have 10 people there and a couple of staff people.
If you bought one section by right, you could have 8 people there, is that
yes,
correct?
Sir. Well, is that right?
Well, even if you bought both sections and only proposed 8, it would be by right.
Okay. Yes. Would it be okay if we bought both sections and had 8 in each one of them?
if you bought like a business like yours, if you
Right.
bought one and you had 8 there, and someone else in the same business bought the other one, you'd have
They could
8
have
there.
8 there
So
as
you'd
well.
have, that's right, you'd have 16.
Yes, sir.
But the way it is, like if you bought one of them, that'd be all you'd have is 8.
So if we were to plan on growing, we would have to make an appeal for that as well. Okay.
Any question?
What's the difference between the current site that you've got now and this site, and where is the current site at?
Our current site is in Woodbury. We've been there since 2003, and it's just not large enough for what we want to do. And not only that, it's in Cannon County, and I believe ever since I've been director of the program that we were supposed to be in Murfreesboro in Rutherford County.
That you were supposed to be? Why is that?
Well, all of our jobs are here. Actually, we only work in one place. All of our guys work in, we're a restoration and reentry program. So when our guys come into our program, they actually go to work, and we provide them a job. They work at a manufacturing plant here in town, and I take care of their money while they're here, and we pay off court costs, fines, restitution, get their child support back in order. We help them get their driver's license back and get back on their feet. The problem with the system a lot of times is that they're in this vicious cycle where they don't have a driver's license, so they can't get a vehicle, so they can't get a job. So what we help them do is get off of that track, get in a safe environment so that we can provide them some relief so that they can get those things back in order. I've got so many people already in this county. There's people that graduated from our program. There's peppered out throughout this county already. Productive citizens, members of society, doing well, reunited with their families. And that's what we want to do, is help them get back on their feet.
Did you have to go through this similar situation up in Cannon County?
No, sir.
Any other questions? No, ma'am. It's the only one we've made an offer on.
Oh, okay.
You a nonprofit or for profit?
We are a nonprofit. Yes, sir.
That throws a wrench in things.
Pardon?
That throws a wrench in things based on your.
I'd have to look into that further to determine whether or not that provision and the definition of family would apply to the specific use, because the longstanding opinion of our office has been that if he were only proposing 8 residents and staff, that it would be permitted by right and it would fall under that definition of family.
I was going by the definition you gave us.
I understand.
And it's read it to me, and that's what he is.
The definition says institutional group. The definition I read you was institution. I would have to go back and look with Doug and review that to see if that definition precludes this nonprofit as being considered under the definition of family, because
Expand on life issues. You just mentioned addiction. What other type of things?
Drug and alcohol addiction.
That's what it is.
Yes, sir.
We're not talking about other people that trying to get over stealing cars or something.
No, sir. No, I strictly deal with people who struggle with addiction, whether it be drugs or alcohol. I don't work with people that are on the sex registry. We're strict about that. And we don't work with hardened criminals. We're not going to have people here that have, committed armed robbery and have, been in the prison system for 20 years. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
When you started this, did you, by chance, meet with any of the neighbors, have a neighborhood meeting or anything like that to answer any of their questions or concerns?
I didn't start this program. Basil Adams started this in 1995. And
I'm talking about this location.
Oh, what about it? I'm sorry.
When you made an offer on this location here and decided you wanted to do this at this location,
Yes, sir.
did you attempt to meet with the neighbors and have a neighborhood meeting or where you can answer their
No,
questions?
sir, I did not. Probably should
Jerry,
have.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Jared?
How long are your residents usually there?
1 year.
1 year total? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And then, I know you said 10, would you have plans to expand at any point, or are you going to keep it at 10 all the time?
Well, you know, I'm a slow-moving guy, so I don't know that we're going to be able to change that anytime soon.
So like 5 years from now, you'd still be at 10, you think?
I really can't answer that, to be honest with you.
Michael?
Mr. Faulkner, one of the requirements states that this is proposed to be operated so that the public health, safety, and welfare will be protected. I think the majority of people, if they're like me, would imagine in their minds that their houses were going to get robbed and their kids abducted and cars broken into. I know, other than the fact that you don't take hardened criminals, what other steps do you take in this program to supervise your students or whatever you call them? I know you have, I think your package says you have 24/7 staff.
We do.
But if the staff is in one building and 2 or 3 guys are in this building, what keeps those guys from sneaking out? I mean, how do you protect the neighborhood?
Right. Well, that's a good question. And, you know, the guys that I have, actually, especially the older students, once they start buying into what we're doing, and that takes about 6 months, once they start getting they're trusted servants as well. So they're living in the same quarters with each other. They monitor each other pretty well. I trust them to keep an eye on the younger guys. And if they've made it past 6 months, they've bought into what we're doing. And, you know, again, these guys they're not out. They're not those hardened criminals that are looking to go break into people's cars, and they're earning a living. They're wanting to get back with their families. They are, and I've got several guys here tonight that are going to testify that have graduated our program. I'm a graduate of the program. I graduated in 2003. I was homeless, living under a bridge in Atlanta, Georgia, because of my addiction. But I made a call to Renewed Life Ministries, and I came here and stayed for a year, had a good job, got back with my family, and now in 2010, God called me into this ministry, and this is what I'm doing. And I believe that what we're doing is important to the community, and I cannot express enough how much that we're actually going to be an asset to the community. We're an asset in Woodbury. We've helped people with change out hot water heaters, cut grass, you know, take care of hedges and things like that for elderly people that don't have the resources to go out and pay for that. And one thing that's, you know, yeah, they get a benefit from that, but you know what? Our guys get a big benefit from that too, because they go and do something for someone else, and it's a good feeling that we get from that. So that's part of our deal, is that we want to be able to help in the community in any way we can.
Go ahead.
I want to, not really a question, but maybe this is a statement or an offer. You might say, would you be interested in postponing this where you could actually go back into the neighborhood there and meet with the neighbors and answer a lot of their questions and their concerns? Because I can understand, I mean, I would, if it was coming in my neighborhood, I would have questions, I would have concerns, I would have fears. And I think that may do you a lot of good to the people out there. It will answer a lot of their concerns and their fears, maybe.
Right.
And maybe come back next month and see where it goes.
I would be okay with that. I certainly would.
I mean, I have concerns tonight over this, and I ain't even heard from the people.
Right. I would definitely be interested in doing that if that's what you guys would like for us to do.
Make those arrangements before next month, or would you need more time?
I can make the arrangements if there would be some willingness on the folks that are in the neighborhood.
We have some folks here who may wish to speak to the BZA while you're here. We don't want to turn you away, but at this point in time, it looks like you're about to make a motion, but we need to have a public hearing first on this. So if you'll be seated and give us
Yes,
a
sir.
chance. What we're thinking about, folks, is having them to meet with you personally out there in your neighborhood and discuss all of this and answer your questions. And you can still come back next month with any objections that you may have. But those of you that are here who would like to make a statement before the BZA tonight, we will allow you to do that. So we'll open this for a public hearing at this time. If you'll come around to the podium and make your statement, please try to keep it within the 3-minute limit. The public hearing is open, so you are allowed to come and make your statement.
I, too, am new to this. I'm James Atkins. I live in Woodbury, so I don't have a dog in the fight as far as Rutherford County, but I live within a mile of where this establishment is now. Got to calm down here and get my nerves together. But I've been a part of the Woodbury community since 1990. I ran the nursing home there for 20 years. And I had, when this began, back in 93, I think Derek said, with Basil Adams, I had heard of it, but that was it. But I drove back and forth by this location how many times and never knew it was even there. In the past 2 to 3 years, I've got to know Derek, and we've talked. I've spent time with the men over there. I've served some meals. There's beautiful, wonderful men there. They've made wrong decisions like all of us made wrong decisions in our lives. But they are coming. He is asking the question, are they court ordered? Yes, there's some that come court ordered, but the ones that I've got to know, they come in there because they're broken. They're ready to be healed. So anyway, where I'm going, there has never, ever been any issue with any of his men or anything there in that location since I've been a part of that community. When you drive by it, his lawn, because it's right on the highway, it's very visible. His lawn, everything about it is always immaculate. It's always cut. It's always trimmed. It looks great. I understand from if it was coming into my neighborhood not knowing, I know I'd have those same questions. But I can tell you with this one, if this is granted, once it is, and when the neighbors meet with them, they will not regret approving this because it's a great program and will not hurt the neighborhood.
Thank you. Anyone else? Come on around if you want to speak to this side.
For myself, good evening. Mr. Cantrell and zoning board members, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Lisa Moore. Most of you know me. I am a member of the Rutherford County School Board. I've lived here in Rutherford County for over 35 years. In addition to what I do in my insurance business as well as my school board position, I am also the Rutherford County Membership Ambassador for the Tennessee Christian Chamber. And I'm here to share with you this evening relationship that I've developed with the Ministry of Renewed Life Ministries through that Tennessee Christian Chamber, and just speak on their behalf. Mr. Faulkner and Mr. Brashears, that I've worked with quite a bit through the chamber the past year, have just been incredible supportive members of the chamber, members of their ministry. I've had the opportunity to watch firsthand how they work their ministry. It's truly a calling, and I do believe that they will be a blessing to this community. I've stood with them in prayer throughout the time that they've looked to make their move from Woodbury to find a larger and better place to grow their ministry. And I will tell you, as a public official here in this county, I considered very carefully and thoughtfully, obviously, coming before you this evening, and this meant enough to me that I was willing to do that and speak on their behalf. Actually used to live out off the Manchester Pike area. My family and I recently moved to a subdivision closer in town, actually a subdivision that's a very considered a nice subdivision. And Mr. Raleigh kind of speak to, I think it was you that said that neighbors might have the concern about the potential for vandalism and that sort of thing. The neighborhood that I live in right now, there's not a day that goes by that we don't see a message on our neighborhood Facebook page about people's cars being broken into or vandalism at the neighborhood pool. And this is a nice neighborhood. Quite frankly, if I had my choice, I would be very grateful and appreciative, knowing Renewed Life Ministries and the way they run their ministry, to have them as my next-door neighbor. So, thank you.
Next.
Hello, my name is Justin Bashirs, and I am a graduate of Renewed Life Ministries. I graduated in 2012, so right at 5 years ago I graduated. Renewed Life Ministries changed my life. When I came into the program, I didn't have anything. I destroyed every relationship I'd ever had with my parents, family. I had no job, had no money, no family, so to speak. Since then, I've been married almost 5 years. I have a 3-year-old son. I have 3 bonus kids. Me and my wife started a small business in Smyrna, and life is good. But I came to realize at Renewed Life Ministries that drugs and alcohol were not my problem. We've all got issues. And the thing about Renewed Life Ministries was it provided me a safe place and enough time to get to those root causes that kept me going back and going back. And that's what it is. It's a safe place where guys can work through those issues that keep them going back. There's a big need here in Tennessee. Between 18 and 25-year-olds, Tennessee has the highest rate of opioid abuse of any state in the country. And I'm more worried about the people that are not coming to the program than the guys that are coming to get some help. Because those are the guys that are saying, you know what, I'm fed up. They were like me. They didn't have anything. I looked like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air when I walked in there. And now I can hold my head up high knowing that I was given the tools that I needed to be successful in life. It's not always been easy, but I know that I would much rather have what I have now than what I had then. And it's because of Renewed Life Ministries. And so if you guys would just give us the opportunity to be in this community, to help more guys, more young people see that who they are is in Christ and they're not the decisions they've made, good, bad, or indifferent, then I would be forever grateful. And I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Janet Turner. My husband Len and I served on the board of Renewed Life Ministries. We have known Derek Faulkner and been familiar with the ministry for about 5 years now. We have had we've had front row seats in watching really what God has done, because these men decided they wanted their lives to be transformed and they were willing to do the work. I think of Justin when he first came into the program, and the Justin that graduated from the program. What a joy that was to watch. I think of Peter, who when he came into the program, I would have said, yeah, I don't think so. But he got it, and he chose life. He chose to change his ways. He chose to surrender to his own agenda. By the time Peter graduated from the program a year later, we invited him to live with us as a place of transition until he got established in his own place. Peter lived with us for 9 months. We are in a regular kind of a neighborhood. There was never any issue, and we're so proud of him. We attended his wedding just 2 weeks ago. And I could tell more and more stories as Scott and Blake and others that we have seen. Last year when we had our banquet, there were more than 500 people from the community attending, supporting this ministry because it is making a difference. Our guys working at a local manufacturing plant, they become taxpayers. That's a good thing. They become productive citizens. I really encourage you to think carefully, and for those of you who will, to pray. It will be a blessing to the community. Thank you.
Next.
Hello, I'm Blake Hamill. I'm also a graduate of Renewed Life Ministries. I graduated 2015. I can tell you with utter confidence that when Derek says he doesn't let just anybody in, he means it. I had to be homeless for a whole week before he actually let me in because he prayed, he thought about it. This is a man who's overqualified for this job, and he runs it very strictly. He doesn't cut he cuts out all the riffraff. As soon as the guy just starts to slip up, he kicks him out of there, and I've seen it. In the year that I was in, I saw 20 people kicked out because he wants this to be a place that's highly reputable, a place that he can hold his head up high, and a place that actually gives back. These are men that become valued members of society, and I'm one of them. And I would not be here if it wasn't for Derek. And I back him up 100%.
Thank you. Next.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Scott Jackson. I am a graduate of Renewed Life Ministries. I graduated with Blake in 2015 and then stayed on at the house for another year as a staff member and helped the men who came after me for a while. And I would just like to say that if I make it till this Sunday, I'll be sober 3 years from the previous 35 years of addiction. It has absolutely changed my life. It has restored my family. The men who come through this program are ready to make a change in their life. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody who comes through the door is going to graduate. I've seen a lot of men come and go over the last 3 years, and I think we've had 7 to 10 people graduate. However, I can tell you this, of the people who graduate, they are doing very well. And of the people who do not graduate, their lives have been changed forever as well, for the better. This program has something to offer not only the men who come through there, but we will have something to offer this community as well. It will be another avenue, another resource for this county to use for people who are struggling with addiction, with alcohol and drugs. And I would just ask you to please consider this change. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon. My name is David Robertson. I've been a resident of Murfreesboro for 40 years, the last 30 of which my wife and I have been pastoral ministry in our community. And I can totally appreciate the skepticism and the concern of the neighbors. And I so appreciate the suggestion and recommendation to have a meeting. That's an outstanding idea. And I would really encourage that to happen. I've met for the last 2 years, every other week at Chick-fil-A with Derek Faulkner. And the reason I believe in Renewed Life Ministries is I believe in that man right there. Derek Faulkner is the real deal. And it goes without saying, our country, our community has a drug problem. It has an alcohol problem. And I couldn't help but thinking that it's everywhere in all of our neighborhoods, clandestinely. And I was sitting there thinking, well, one place I know there probably is not going to be drugs is the place that they're going to be. It's not going to be there. And they're not going to have alcohol there. They're not going to have tobacco or smokeless tobacco there. How do I know that? It's because I know Derek. There is policy and protocol and procedure and internal controls to make sure that it's not there. If there's ever anywhere it won't be, it's probably not there. And if it is discovered they smuggle in a cigarette, there are quick and harsh consequences to that. It is a very tight ship. And he's not an enabler, and I appreciate that. And so I find it curious and very interesting. I'm just a pastor. I'm just trying to help people. But I find it curious and interesting to people that have become allied and raving fans of Derek Faulkner and Renewed Life Ministries, people like Neil T. Anderson, author of 72 books on recovery. He came and spoke at his banquet last year free of charge because he's a believer in Renewed Life Ministry. The year before that, Mike Courtney, the founder of another faith-based ministry in our community, Branches Recovery Center, he spoke the year before at the banquet. Eddie Turner, pastor of Family Worship Center on Memorial Boulevard, has made their church the home base for this ministry. Hundreds and hundreds of people are exposed. And this pastor has opened arms. Our church, Christian Life Church, Ron Karadoff, our pastor, we support them every month. My wife and I write a check every month. Why? Because we need to do something. And my encouragement to you is not to relegate this ministry to like, well, you know, somebody needs to do this. We all believe in what you're doing. Thank you for doing this, Mr. Faulkner. But, you know, if we're not careful, we'll treat them like a leper colony and say, you know, you need to do it, but you need to do it there. Not here, but there. Thank you, sir. And my encouragement is they're not going to infect our community. They're going to affect our community in a positive way. And I thank you for allowing me to share the comments.
Thank you. Next.
My name's Dan Dickey. I live at 7427 Manchester Pike. Been a lot of flowery words here. I rise in opposition to this thing. I've had an alcoholic son. I know how they can go off the tangent. There's no reason to put that kind of stress on our community. There's escape routes to go to the interstate. That property's not, it's just barely got a farm fence on it, so it's no big deal with them. You know, who pays for these people to be there? Do they pay for it themselves, or is he got some kind of scam going where he can get government money? There's a lot of questions I got about this. I'm totally disgusted with having to look at it.
Thank you. Next.
My name's Jim Branson. I live next door to the property. I wouldn't have known about this except one night the current owners, which I don't think they're even here, and that kind of surprises me that the people trying to sell this property are not even in attendance with us. But one of his horses got loose, and I happened to help him get them back in the corral. And he said, oh, by the way, I've got a contract on this property, and it's with this group. And I asked him, I said, well, is this a halfway house? He says, well, maybe. No, you know, I don't think you'd call, you know, I thought then, okay, somebody's trying to slip something in on us. We didn't know anything about it. Nobody had ever approached us about this. I thought that would have been a good idea for the gentleman to come and talk to all the neighbors, but nobody ever approached it. They were just going to slide it on through, it seemed like. I have a lot of concerns with it. Like I said, I'm wondering when it comes to the time that either I sell my property or my heirs do, is anybody going to want to buy property next to a, quote, halfway house, which it's got a good reputation and stuff, but, you know, I have concerns about it, and the way it was approached and stuff, I'm not happy with. I'll say that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next.
My name is Keith Bogle, and my mother owns the property at 7536 and 7526. It shares a long property line with the property they're looking to buy. And I stand in complete and total opposition to this. I took a liberty of taking some notes here, if you bear with me a minute. The way the current property is set up, if you allow me to go back about 20 years or so, when the fellow came in and created the property, started building homes, he moved, pardon me, I'm nervous and halfway ticked off for even having to be here. He put up a double-wide mobile home, and then he lived there while him and his wife built the big house. And then they moved into the house. And then either their son and daughter-in-law or daughter and son-in-law and 2 daughters moved into the double wide. And subsequently, they built a large garage behind the house, built a little building behind the double wide where the 2 homeschool girls did their homeschooling and other things, I'm sure. The current owners came in about 5 years ago. They turned the garage into another house. The building behind the double wide, they converted that into a residence. Single person, I think. And so, right now, that's probably the only people looking to buy this, that's willing to buy this, the way it's set up right now. And you can't hold us accountable for their bad property management. I got some quotes here that I got off the website from what they submitted. Part of their vetting process is consulting with probation officers. So we're going to have probation officers coming in and out. I highly suspect. Molly Manufacturing, or ever how you pronounce it, does not hire felons unless they come through our program. There, to me, that's all you really need to know. The approving this change will bring an ever-revolving set of 10 or more, and I understand in the paperwork they're handing out, it's going to be 20 or more. You might want to look at that. Felons to reside in our safe, peaceful neighborhood. Another direct quote, we help men achieve financial stability by paying off court costs, fines, restitution, child support, driver's license issues, etc. Make no mistake about it, whether it is Christian, Muslim, Hindu, or whatever religious spin they put on it, and I've got nothing against the ministry, what you're doing, just not in my backyard, not in my neighborhood. It doesn't change the fact that this will be a halfway house for felons and drug addicts. And if word gets out, and it will, that these people are paying off felons' court costs, fines, restitution, that being paying for the physical and financial damage these people have left in their wake, child support and other issues, every drug addict from miles around would be trying to manipulate their way into the premises for the benefits with no real intention to change whatsoever. I've known a few drug addicts in my life. In their long-term comments to offer men who graduate, I believe one young man stood up here and told me he saw him kick out 20 men in 1 year. If they kick them out, where do they go? My mother's house, she's got a swing set up just 15 feet from the property line, from the fence line. They act like maybe nobody, because there's not a house back there, we don't go back there and take care of things, keep things mowed, take care of the trees and stuff. 10 students for the foreseeable future. And like I said, in the paperwork they're passing out tonight, they're saying 20. So I asked the question, then what, 20, 30, exactly where would this end? Approving this request will ruin my mother's property. Got 4.5 acres. She shares the entire northern boundary with this place. The properties around it, in my opinion, and the neighborhood itself, on behalf of my mother and myself, as well as any long-term residents of the neighborhood that agree with me on this, including those who have purchased properties and have built homes for their families, their teenage daughters, and yes, there are teenage daughters in this community, and younger children, I urge you with the strongest voice possible to deny this request. In conclusion, and on a personal note, my mother and I, like I alluded to, we keep the land on this property maintained. I keep the fence line around the property, and if you look on the map, there's 4.5 acres there. She shares that entire property line, the red line, and the green line's immediately above that. There's a lot of fence line there, a lot of old growth trees, a lot of old field fence. On this side, she collaborated with the original developer of the property and put in 400 or 500 feet of chain link fence. We have since repopulated that with shrubs and trees because we started having a problem with the people who live there now and their loud parties and other things. They got a swimming pool 25 feet from the property line.
Need to finish that, sir.
I'll wrap it up. We keep the fence and the property mowed wide enough to get a vehicle around. In conclusion, I would rather not have to concern myself whether some ex-con, some felon, fresh into the system, some recovering crackhead is having a bad day in the pool 25 feet from my property line or anywhere near their property. I have an 82-year-old mother, 82-year young mother, widower, who lives alone in that house immediately in front of this property. God help the next individual from that side of the fence that threatens my mother or her property. We've had that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My mother, I was taking back.
I'm Geneva Bogle. I live at 7536 Manchester Highway. My house is to the north, down close to the road, less than 400 feet from the house that they are planning on putting the stuff in. Hasn't the stuff there? The Bogles have been in the community since back in the 1940s. Years ago, this wouldn't even have come this far to get a vote. This does not belong in a residential community. That sounds like a good program. But where has the respect for elderly people gone? I'm 82 years old, and they won't stick a place for convicts next door. I'm saying no, and if you bring it up again in 6 months and I'm still around, I'm still going to say no. It does not belong there. I've been there since, in the gun community since 1960. That's 57 years. And I'm a resident of Tennessee. And I've been retired 20 years. And I'd like to finish living my life out in a peaceful community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Mason.
Speak into the microphone.
My name is Michael Mason. Good afternoon. This is new to me. I moved to Murfreesboro 4 years ago. I brought my family here. I rented for the first year to learn, to look around, see where I wanted to buy property. Now I am a resident at 7720 in the neighborhood. But I am here to speak for everyone from Joe B. Jackson all the way down to Eldons Road, because this community, the past 3 years, 4 years that I've been living here, I brought my kids, my animals, come here for school, come here for work, to start business in the community. I come to Rutherford County for education. My son's about to graduate, got a daughter going into high school, got one playing sports in middle school. But from here, we've been nothing but growth of new neighborhoods, of residential, nothing but new housing, nothing but community for the kids. We got a brand new high school that's in speak to be built over there. We got 300 plus more housing to be built in the residence. And the thing is, children, I'm speaking for the young now. We have all this schooling and everything that's trying to be built up, people trying to buy property over here to have this residential living area from all the way down, number new houses, new swimming facilities, everything like this, new schools for kids to go to. I give honor to God and thanks for the program to help these older men, but we need a place where these kids could go and have a nice living community and no worries if there's a program down the street, if there's a program with criminals their parents worried about. Like I said, I got daughters, I got nephews, I got nieces and cousins that's all different age and things like that. Rehab and drug abuse, it's everywhere. But what I'm saying is, I do not think this is the community where this needs to be, because this whole area is nothing but family-oriented growth where it's coming from the churches. Our new church is being built, but it's churches alone, from the new schools, the new neighborhoods and everything like this, and the facility, it will hurt later on in the long run from the upgrowth, from whatever else that's trying to be built around there safe-wise, for people that will try to sell their properties and things like that, and all kinds of things. So I hope everybody for the kids, I think this is a place where upgrowth for the kids. Thank y'all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Sandy Bell, and I've been a resident of Rutherford County for 42 years now, and I have been volunteering in the community for 24 years. I am a homeless advocate in Murfreesboro. I serve daily in our homeless camp, so I deal with addicts daily. I have worked very closely with Derek. His program is nothing but amazing. I think that before we talk about crime and people being afraid, I think we ought to talk about the stats of his current home in Woodbury. I think that people probably should have done some due diligence before speaking of crime when they got up here. Derek runs an outstanding program. I've made the phone call to Derek, hey, I've got somebody that wants to enter your program, and he asked me questions. He's like, no, they're not ready yet. Let's get them at this 30-day program, and then let them come to me. Derek is mindful. He runs a very successful program. For the gentleman that said his son's an alcoholic, my prayer from this point forward is that your son gets to meet Derek and gets that help with sobriety. But people, we have to start somewhere. If you want to see addicts, please come with me one day. Please come with me one day. And you talk about families living here and there. How about the families that will enter this program and turn their lives around? And like the gentleman that got married and he has a business now. How about that opportunity for our community? You guys, the pill addiction, the alcohol addiction, and someone mentioned, paying off the fines. They're going to be working to pay off those fines, to pay their child support, to do what they should do. That's part of rehabilitation, is having them do what they should do. I volunteered this weekend in Uncle Dave Macon Days with Derek and all of his men. We worked the whole weekend, worked the gates, not a problem. I made a Facebook post last week. I had a young family living in their vehicle, got them into a motel, and we were desperate for food. I get a text message from Derek, hey, me and my guys can get some food together. They went to my church on Sunday, and they delivered the food to my house. Derek does a lot for the community in Woodbury. Thank you very much. But I just think that we need to look at his current program in Woodbury, and I understand the idea of crime, but unfortunately, crime's right out that front door. It can happen to any of us. But as someone that's had people enter his program, I can tell you guys, it is absolutely top-notch.
Thank you. Next.
David Dry. I live at 7661 Manchester Pike. I came here not really knowing exactly what this was going to be. I respect what he's doing, but I've worked in the medical field since 1971, and I'm a bit jaded because the dealings I've had with drug and alcohol abusers have not been good. I've been assaulted, spit on, cursed at. I have had people who've been through rehab to do the exact same thing, but I've also seen people successfully rehabbed. But not knowing how many people are felons concerns me. There's just not enough information. I never heard enough about this until the last day or two. So at the moment, I'm opposed to this unless somebody can convince me. But it's going to be hard to convince because I don't know how many people are felons, how many people failed the program. And like you said, when people were kicked out, we don't know where they're from, we don't know where they go to. So I have a lot of questions that I'd like to be addressed.
Thank you. Anyone else? We'll close the public hearing. Got an idea?
Could we have the applicant back up to ask some questions?
Pardon?
Could we have the applicant back up to ask some more questions?
You know, I'd prefer not to get into that, unless you all want it, all of you.
I've got a question for staff. Well, first of all, it sounds like that a neighborhood meeting may not do any good. I don't know, but I thought it might. But my question is, with the 10 that he's wanting versus where 8 we don't have any control over, how much authority or how much control will the county have over this if there is issues that come up with the 10? What can we do to them if there are problems that come up and the neighbors have documentation of what's occurred?
I can't answer that, but they will. But here's the thing that we have. If we turn it down, there's nothing that we can do. It would not come under anything that the county has that we can enforce, because they can go out there and get the right for one piece of property and it'll never come here. I hope all of you understand.
Well, that's where I'm heading.
Is that what you're getting at?
That's where I'm heading.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I know there's nothing we can do about the 8. What can we do if things occur out there with the 10?
They would be limited to the 10. They would be limited to what they're proposing to use the structures for. Any use of the structures that's not consistent with what they originally approved, if it were determined that it's not the special exception's not being complied with, then it would start the enforcement procedures to make them come into compliance. With them living it would be treated as a single-family residence if they were not to get special exception, and if they were to come under the definition of family and reside at the property as a single unit. And so if there were activities that were not consistent with what a single-family residence would be considered, like maybe a home-based business, or they indicated that they'd like to have a woodworking shop or a 3-hour program, then those activities that they're looking at in the future might not be consistent under the residential use of the structure, as opposed to being a special exception.
Okay. But if it's approved with the 10, could the county shut it down if there were issues that arise in violations of the ordinance?
If they were in violation of the that would be the case regardless.
Okay.
The county, if they were deemed in violation of the ordinance, then they would have to remedy the situation, come into compliance, or cease and desist.
So, but with the 8 would not be, it's a right by use.
It is considered a use by right, yes,
So
sir.
the county actually has more authority if it's what goes on out there with what they're asking for than what they could have.
Well,
legally.
under the special exception, you could add conditions that might be applicable to the proposed use, and it gives you the ability to say, okay, well, if these activities start taking place, or if we start getting complaints, then you may have to modify it to, reduce what you're using the property as. So you could include conditions, but I don't know what conditions you would put into the special exception approval that would eliminate the concerns that you've heard tonight.
One of the things that I like and I think would be appropriate is to delay this and allow these folks that live out there a chance to meet with those who are making this decision. I think, they still may not resolve any of the issues, but at least they've had a chance to meet one-on-one with the people who have that property. And then it'll come back next month to us, And if there are requirements that we want to put on to this, we can do that at the time, and you still will have a chance for a public hearing again next month.
I offered that earlier, and I'll make a motion that we defer it and ask the applicant to have a neighborhood meeting to answer any and all questions from the neighbors out there.
Second on that?
I'll second it.
Call the roll, please.
Gary Farley,
Yes.
Veronica Buchanan,
Yes.
Joe Michotto,
Yes.
Jerry Sartain,
Yes.
Michael Rather,
Yes.
Jared Barrett,
Yes.
Zane Cantrell.
Yes. Jerry, I'm sorry, I overlooked you there. Okay, we'll get that for you. I apologize to you. Any other items?
Mike brought up a good point. If a location is needed, the applicant can work with us and we can make available the mezzanine meeting room for that neighborhood meeting if he'd like to hold it.
And also, if the neighborhood meeting is held out there, I would like for someone from staff to be there to be able to answer any of the questions. There may be some come up that someone may need an answer on.
Sure.
Okay. Jerry, do you have any other comments? Okay. You have to throw something at me. Any other items?
No, sir.
We are adjourned. Thank you, folks, for being here.